Prince Andrew has reached a settlement with Virginia Giuffre. It means he will avoid a jury trial on claims that he sexually abused and raped her on 3 separate occasions when she was 17. Andrew has always denied the allegations, and in the settlement, he does not admit guilt. However, he does strike a different tone than in previous statements regarding both Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre. So the statement announcing the settlement states, Prince Andrew intends to make a substantial donation to Miss Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. Prince Andrew has never intended to malign Miss Giuffre's character, and he accepts that she has suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. It is known that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked countless young girls over many years. Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. 2 parts stand out for me. First, where it says Prince Andrew never intended to malign Miss Giuffre's character and that he now, quote, commends her bravery. That's at odds with the arguments made by his lawyers at the hearing last month in New York. At that time, they suggested Giuffre may have suffered from, quote, false memories and requested to see her medical records, including notes from counselling sessions. The second part that stands out to me is where it states that Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein. This reads as odd because one might assume it goes without saying that a public figure would regret their association with a convicted paedophile. Why would it need to be included in a legal settlement? Well, it needed to be because until now, Andrew had been unrepentant. Here he is speaking to Emily Maitlis in that infamous Newsnight interview.
Do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein?
Still not. And the reason being is that the people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn, either by him or because of him, were actually very useful.
So he doesn't regret, or he didn't regret, associating with a convicted sex offender because it allowed him to meet people and learn things that were very useful.
There's obviously many reasons why someone in Virginia Giuffre's position would settle. You know, that I'm sure she's been on the receiving end of some pretty nasty, indirect intimidation from, let's not forget, some of the most powerful people in the world. You know, we saw some of it there in a kind of veiled threat from Andrew's lawyers that they would try and position Virginia Giuffre as some kind of co-conspirator with her abuser, even though we know, and you know, if he is wanting to become an advocate for victims of sex trafficking, he should, you know, Andrew should know that roping in a victim in that kind of recruiter position is a classic abuse tactic within sex trafficking, and it's often a key part of the trauma and the power play. So many survivors do settle, especially when they are up against very powerful actors, because powerful people, as we have seen, become very ugly when their reputation is under threat. But that doesn't mean that it's not disappointing that Andrew will not have to see his day in court, not because I necessarily think that courts are the best way to adjudicate or get healing in sexual violence cases. You know, we've seen that in the fact that it's taken so long for this to even get this far, and that's not the case. But it sends this message essentially that you can buy your way out of accountability, especially even in a case that is this serious, that has caused this much harm and has implicated so many people. I worry that many powerful people who may be unnamed at the moment, who otherwise might be implicated in this case, have maybe breathed a sigh of relief today. And that's sad. And ultimately, many of the young girls and the women who were harmed by Epstein and the infrastructure of sexual violence that he orchestrated, they were told that the people harming them was so powerful that they would never be held accountable. And if the allegations against Andrew are true, then that clearly continues to be the case. And that's sad, especially when you think about the amount of momentum and public support behind Virginia Giuffre. And yet it couldn't surmount the kind of pressure that was being placed on her to settle. And as for the kind of damage control strategies that we're seeing, the shift in narrative, it's clearly down to the fact that because of the settlement, Andrew and his team are basically not on the defense anymore. So I can guarantee to you that if he hadn't settled, the knives would absolutely still be out, and he would be using him and his team would be using every misogynistic trick in the book to smear her character. And a couple of donations to charities is not going to change the fundamental truth here, which is that the Epstein trial showed us that there is a very small elite there who are quite literally above the law. They literally fly in their private plane above the law. And an inevitable consequence of that, as we have seen, is going to be abuse of power and systemic harm. And so looking ahead of Andrew, looking ahead at the particular implications this might mean for the monarchy or for Andrew himself, the question is has that fundamental truth changed? And I worry that because of the ability to evade his day in court, that hasn't changed as much as we would perhaps have liked it to, given the amount of work and risk that the team of survivors that have brought light to what Epstein was doing, given the amount that they have put into this. I think it would have been a lot better if we could have had that day in court.